But so grateful to be with you all today. My name is Anthony Bolden. I serve as CEO and co-founder for Bridgework. And also similar to Charles, I am the executive director for an organization called Chicago Debates here in the Chicagoland area. Um, and we are doing our best work to bridge and balance both our professional aspirations as we also continue to live out our mission here with Bridgework. So we're excited to share some concepts that we hope are beneficial to you all. I know we're not together for a long time, so we're going to use this short period of time to be as impactful as we can. So I'll pass it back to Charles to kick us off.
Absolutely. So the one thing that you want to know about Bridgework and sort of our mission, we really want to invest in tomorrow's leaders. That's what we spend most of our time thinking about. But we want to do that right now. This is why we're so excited when we get these opportunities to share a bit about a framework, but then also the personal work that we can do to implement this framework that we're going to touch on in a moment. And so our big vision, we know that you all have big visions there at Contra Costa and have read and watched some of the other people that have come before us and the amazing work that Arlene is doing to bring these individuals together and to invest in you all. And so our bold vision is that we can transform hopefully 100,000 organizations by empowering them to create transformational people-centered workplaces, right? Of which we know you all are already a part in doing. And so this is what makes us excited to see that there are other organizations, large, even scale organizations like yourselves, who are already doing this work, who are already focusing on their people, while they also change the world of work, which we know that you all do. And so there are some practical ways in which we are going about doing this.
Yeah, so foundationally, our work is all about trying to bridge the realities that exist in the workplace between employers or leaders and the people who do the work on their teams, right? We want to try to build more harmonious, empathetic, synergized organizations. And we do that through what we call our workforce or workplace revitalization project. And really, the main or portion or a mission of this project is to go into the organization and help individuals recognize that they are ultimately better when they work together, but also recognizing that instead of always looking outward at your team member about what they can do better, how they might be able to improve, how they might be able to be more efficient or effective, the workplace revitalization project turns the mirror back on ourselves, right? And turns the mirror back on the team to ask, where are we having deficiencies as a team? How might we address them, right? Our saboteur assessment is all about looking at the things we bring into the workplace and how we might be able to use them to strengthen our own leadership capacity, and recognizing that how we or what we bring into work ultimately informs how we engage with others, how we collaborate with others. And then through our star in your role activity, I like to say it's like a tongue-in-cheek way to practice what it looks like to live out or work in someone else's shoes, right? A lot of times, if you're entry level or if you're a middle manager, or if you're the senior executive, sometimes it's hard to remember, right? Or even have the experience to empathize with what might be informing the way someone does their work or approach their work. And what that activity does is it kind of gives us a glimpse of one another's work realities. And ultimately, we walk out with a little bit more empathy and respect for how we do work as a team. All of this is founded and informed by the way that Charles and I see work and the way that we believe leaders as well as employees should approach work, so that we ultimately might live a more contentful and purposeful work-life balance between what we do in the workplace and what we do at home.
This is a perfect segue to something that we have crafted, which is the Bridgework framework. Okay, so I want you, wherever you are, you're sitting up in your seat, maybe you're in your conference room, you have your to-go tray in front of you. I'm already thinking about mine after this. We want you to help visualize this bridge framework. Everything that we do and we try to do at least is intentional. So you saw, yes, as Arlene pointed out, those of you who are just joining us, we had a graphic at the very beginning of some of the famous bridges that are overlook the lake that goes through the center of our city, right? And so, in many ways, that is the best way that we can describe this framework is this visualization of a bridge, right? And there are two sides to this bridge. But I want to pause for a moment before I give you the actual breakdown of it to tell you a little bit of a story. I kind of shifted in roles in the last about a month and a half now, and in my new role, I had some new reports. And one of my new reports, she was navigating, or is, I should say, currently navigating a personal thing with her family. Right, her son, about 6 to 7 weeks ago, started experiencing some very debilitating pain. Actually, the pain had been going on for 6 months. But like a lot of us, and I know you all work in the healthcare field, many of us wait a while before we get something checked out, right? And so he finally got it checked out about 6 to 7 weeks ago because it was just too much to bear. He couldn't go to work anymore. He couldn't drive. And so they did a variety of tests trying to rule things out, but they weren't able to identify. Actually, to this day, right now, Tuesday, September 16th, they still have not been able to identify what is causing his pain, right? They thought it was leukemia. That turned out not to be the case. They did a biopsy just last week. And all the while, my coworker, while her son is going through this, she's still having to show up day in and day out to work, right? She's still having to be responsible for her employees, who are one of which is pregnant, one of which just lost their grandmother, right? One of which who is going out on the road for recruitment for us and is overwhelmed by the work that they have, right? And so while she's trying to navigate her own things, she still professionally is responsible for all of these other people who are navigating things as well, right? And I think a lot of times, I just want to kind of sit here and pause, is that we recognize the reason why you have these sort of wellness checks, these opportunities that we have to pause from what's going on in the world, is because we are all navigating things on both sides of this spectrum. We all have personal responsibilities that are weighing us down while still being expected to work those 4 days straight, or to still show up for that 12 to 14-hour shift, right? To still have that smile and that great bedside manner for that individual who is not being very kind to you, right? To still clean that area, even though your manager hasn't maybe been the most welcoming or most patient, right? We're having to balance these things all the time, right? There's a both and, it's not an either or. And ultimately, at the heart of this Bridgework framework is an acknowledgement. And I think that is ultimately the key, right? And this is what you're doing here today. There's an acknowledgement that in order for us to be the best possible individuals that we can be at work, we also have to fold in and acknowledge what's going on outside of it, right? That the two work best in tandem. And so we've created this graphic that will hopefully help break down and maybe even create some light bulb moments for you all as you're thinking about this idea of balance, this tension, this gap that you're trying to consistently fill between, yes, my personal on the one side, right? That personal development. We all, in addition to the responsibilities that we hold, there are personal goals that we might have. There are places that you want to travel. There are relationships that you're trying to work through and to improve, right? There's our responsibilities. Maybe you have children, maybe you have pets, maybe you have goals, again, outside of the workplace. But then on that other side of the bridge, there is that professional responsibility. There's that contract that you sign to show up at these certain hours to do this type of work, right? And at times it can feel that those things are at odds with one another. But our goal is to create, as Anthony said, some synergy in the middle, right? Is to bridge that gap. And how we do that, as we say, is to do bridge work, right? So that's the one level, that's the top level of this graphic. But on the bottom, right, there is also you as the employee, right? And then also Contra Costa and the responsibilities, the mission that they are setting out to accomplish, right? How do we bridge that tension as well? How do we make sure that we're showing up for the many different patients that you're called to serve within this county, while also making sure that the employees are invested in, that they are professionally developed, that they're going places, that they are well balanced, which is what some of the amazing work that our lead is doing through these, right, through these sessions. And so this idea, again, this tension is bridge work. I am a better coworker, right? A better, even dare I say, better employee because of my attentiveness to where my coworker is currently, right? The one-on-ones that we've had over the last couple of weeks are different. I know that she's going to get her work done. I know that her team is going to be taken care of. But sometimes it's just hearing her heart. It's just hearing the fact that I don't know what's going to happen next with my son. And that those 30 minutes that she takes with me can be all the difference in the world, as I know she would do the same for me and the things that I'm navigating personally as well, right? And so this framework, this ideology, this perspective shift is what we truly believe will help transform workplaces. Why? Because once I feel like I'm seen in where I am personally, then I know that I can show up even better professionally. And so we put at the very bottom of the screen, there are some avenues, if you will, that you can utilize to get to doing bridge work well, right? Balancing that tension, one, acknowledging that it's there, right? Reflecting on where you are. Right now, at any given moment, my son is actually in the very next room eating his lunch, right? On Tuesdays and Thursdays is when he's home with dad. And so at any moment, he could pop in here, ask me a quick question. I'll have to pause and say, hey, I'm actually in this presentation right now. But that's a real thing that I have to reflect and acknowledge. That's the sort of work dynamic that I'm balancing right now, right? Investing. Right. This right now, this moment that you're here right now, I want to applaud you for even taking the moment because you're investing in the journey to doing bridge work just by you showing up in this moment. Right. You're developing stronger connections. Some of you are in groups, as Arlene said, right? And so you're doing this work together. But then also you're going to gain some experience through just the acknowledgement, but also through the fact that you're adapting through the various seasons of life. Seasons change, they come and they go. Now, I'll be honest, where you all are located, your seasons are less harsh than the ones that we navigate here in but a moment. Anthony can attest. We're going through 80 degrees right now. It was just 50 degrees last week. So it's a little bipolar in the seasons here. But ultimately, the same rule applies. We are in and out of various seasons. And as a result of that, it will change what we have to put on. It will change what we have to take off. The same applies to the workplace. And the acknowledgement is key. Right. And then lastly, it's embracing the process. And a part of this embrace involves acknowledging the ownership that we take in shifting where we are. And so that's what we're going to talk about right now. A lot of the things that I've touched on are really outside of your control, but there are things that you can grab a hold of within yourself that will impact the way you're able to do bridge work and ultimately the way we hope you're able to show up in the workplace. So Anthony's going to unpack that right now.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. So I think for us, the idea behind bridge work is really informed by a foundational belief that we believe that work needs to happen differently, that we need to do work differently, that the way that we've approached work for, I don't know, the last 100 years, if you would, is right now in crises with what people need, right? People are looking for work for more than just a paycheck. You may be here sometimes for a paycheck, but also recognizing that you spend a lot of hours here. So work should be a place of belonging, should be a place where you feel safe, should be a place where you are able to grow into a better version of yourself. And a lot of times when we are having those contemplations about how do those things become true, how can work be done differently, so again, we look outwardly, we look at management, we look at leadership, we look at our coworkers, and we say to ourselves, if we're honest, hey, if you do this better, then it will make my experience more enjoyable. However, I would challenge you, as we continue to challenge ourselves, to recognize that each of us are bringing things into the workplace that are informing not just how we do our work, but how people do work with us, right? Dr. Shirzad Shamim, who is the founder of an organization called Positive Intelligence, crafted some research called saboteurs. And it really talks about these kind of invisible internal guardians, these habits, these reflexes and traits that each of us have because we are human, that at one point in our lives, they were crafted, or we took them on, if you would, to help us survive this world, right? They became a way that protected our emotions, that helped us find belonging in how we behave, that gave us a sense of peace and contentment. However, these saboteurs, according to Dr. Shamim, they eventually become a callus, and they are no longer just a habit or trait that we rely on to get to an expected end, but they become a part of our personalities. They become a part of, for some of us, even our branding, and we are proud of these types of traits that we've taken on. However, we have to be careful that these saboteur traits don't overtake the way that we engage with others, the way that we lead others, the way that we collaborate with others. So, but the challenge is sometimes many of us don't even know that they exist, right? And in order to really do work differently, to make the workplace, the way that we do work, a better experience for everyone involved, it starts at looking internally. So there are, in this research, a number of accomplished saboteurs, but before you get to the accomplished, you just have to recognize that as a human, we all have what Dr. Chimene says is the judge, the kind of voice in our head that says, we're not enough. You're not doing enough. You could be doing it better. Why did you do it that way? Right? It's that voice that kind of always puts you off your feet, right? Never allows you to enjoy the success that you're experiencing. So we all have that master judge, is what it's called. But along with that judge are what are called accomplished saboteurs. And these traits are unique to you, right? As much as they are unique to me, right? When I took this assessment, there's an assessment that comes with this research. I learned, but wasn't surprised that I am a hyperachiever, that I am a controller. Those were my top two. Now, if you look at my life, I am the eldest of 10 siblings. I'm the big brother, right? When I was a kid and we didn't do our chores in the way we're supposed to, I was the one who got yelled at, right? I was the one who, my mom worked two jobs. I had to cook dinner. I had to make sure people were ready, or my siblings were ready for school in the morning, right? I was the first one to go to college and get a college degree, right? So that hyperachiever controlling mechanism, these traits, had become at some point a portion of pride. I would be very proud that, hey, I was getting things done. I was going to school, getting good grades. And now as a professional, I'm, meeting my fundraising targets and leading my organization. All of these things were true. However, when I began to look under the hood, which this research kind of suggests we should do, I began to realize that reliance on being a hyperachiever and a controller wasn't necessarily always being used in a positive way, right? There is a place for my hyperachieving habit, but there is also a truth that exists underneath those habits. And what this research suggests is that the hyperachiever, the person like Anthony, is not only achieving because I'm diligent, but I am overly obsessed with success and achieving because I have convinced myself, right, for some reason, that if I don't succeed, then I might be found out. Or, right, when I think back to childhood, that if I am not successful, then I might be looked at as a failure, or other people might fail. And instead of really wrestling with a healthy understanding of that and letting myself know that, hey, you don't always have to be chasing in order to be successful, I over rely on that. And sometimes it shows up in my leadership, right? And that's the question I really want you to wrestle with. When we're going to share the link of this assessment with you, so you can take it on your own. But not only do you need to be self-aware of with how these things show up in your own personality and how you work, they also can show up in how you live and love. But what does it mean for you to change the way you are leading and collaborating with folks based off of what you know about yourself, right? How do you empower others as a leader knowing that you are the controller, right? How do you let yourself know that things won't fall apart and that I can actually find peace in the midst of chaos, watching someone else learn how to lead, and I don't have to control everything, right? How do you, as the stickler who wants things a specific type of way, recognize that the team you manage needs you to give them a little grace? They need a little bit of gray, right? In order to feel like this is a place that they want to not just work and get a paycheck, but a place where they can belong and sustain a long-term career. We're all trying to build retention. We're all trying to find the next leader in our organizations. But if we become too hyper fixated on our own traits or unaware of these traits, then we can be working against ourselves, whether we know it or not. And that's why we always say, we have to first start with us as the leaders, as the employees, as the contributor. The work of changing the world of work begins with you and me. And then we can begin to do the work as a team and as a unit. Now, this, again, I could go on and on and on about the subject. This is just not even an appetizer, like an amuse-bouche, right? Like right at the tip of the meal. But I'm hoping it's kind of getting you thinking and asking a bit of questions about how you might approach work differently, how you might even approach the way that you are dealing with yourself in a much more holistic and healthy way. I think I see that we might have some questions in the chat here. Yes. All right. Charles has already shared the link. Please use this link to take the quiz. It will only take you about 5 minutes or so to do it. So if you still have some time after this webinar, we would really encourage you to do it. And again, we would be happy to do it with you. We dive much deeper into this research. And then there's a concept here that we didn't talk about, but it's all right. Hey, my saboteurs are here, but there's a concept called operating in your sage, right? And what does it look like to operate in that sage? Because really, that's how you strike the balance of knowing that that saboteur exists, but there is a healthy way to activate it in your work.
Love this. For those of you who are joining, who have been with us, tracking with us, what questions, what comes up for you all as you are receiving this, both in doing bridge work, right? How you're able to really balance both your personal and your professional, but then also, as Anthony put so well, getting to a place of operating within your sage, within your strong suit, within these areas that might be, again, defense mechanisms originally, but really can be your superpowers if manifested appropriately. Even as you're thinking about questions that you want to pop in the chat, I'll also say for mine, I took this as well. I was the pleaser, still am the pleaser, still working through that. Similarly, in terms of a lot of these things come, as Anthony said, from our childhood, from sort of early stage development, and just in the way that I was raised. And there was always a sort of a pressure or emphasis on the need, right, to please those around me. And that shows up continuously, even to this day, even in the way that I lead, in the way that I lead, not only in work, but also my family, right? I'm consistently thinking about how am I going to help make them happy, or how am I going to get them to a place of satisfaction at the expense often of myself. So I know pleasers who are maybe even listening now, the sort of other side of that coin is that you can get to a place of resentment because you have now backed yourself into a corner of always looking out for the people, and maybe they are not asking you to, per se, right? And so I think it's important, again, to have an acknowledgement, as Anthony said, of where exactly are we, and how ultimately can this also be a positive thing that we utilize as well.
Charles, I have a quick question.
Yes, yes, yes.
We have heard some statements. I myself have heard this as well, or receive it, or maybe sometimes I even think about it, that if I'm going to let you do it, or if someone will do it, it will not be as good as me, or it will not be as fast as me. You know, oh, I'll just do it because it will be faster and quicker and correct the first time.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, and guess what? That might just be true, right? You may do it the best, you may do it the fastest, right? You might be the most efficient at it. However, the goal, especially in the workplace, is to ensure that, you know, if one of us got hit by a bus tomorrow, or we got sick, right, and we were out of work for the next few weeks, that the work could still move forward. I think where we have to learn how to exist is in the in between, right? Sometimes when we ourselves, or if there's a member on the team who just does that job to the best, we have to remember the version of the system or our workplace or even ourselves when we weren't there. And how do we make that a reality for other people? What I like to say to other leaders is your responsibility is not always to let everything go well. Sometimes it's important to allow some balls to drop, because those lessons will ultimately strengthen the entire team, right? So I think trying to maybe bake in times for teaching could be right. Like maybe someone does it a little bit slower. Maybe they're going to need some coaching along the way. So if there is a project or a responsibility that needs to be done, maybe giving them a little bit more lead time than you wouldn't necessarily give yourself, but also being honest and clear about what is good, right? And is good enough for the responsibility, right? So if you're doing surgery, right, maybe you can learn on the cadaver, right? But if we're doing some coding, right, maybe giving them an extra hour or two to get it done, even though you could get it done quicker, might create an opportunity for them to eventually be able to operate at that same level.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add to that, because I think everything that Anthony said, is a basketball analogy. If you only get better if you keep shooting, right? I can remember my high school coach would always tell me that if you get to a point, right, you've been 0 for 10, and then you don't shoot for the rest of the game, he said the one thing that I can guarantee, you will never hit another shot. Because you're not shooting, right? So there is a responsibility ultimately, whether as a teammate or as the one encouraging or the one responsible for the person to shoot, to take the shots, right? It's just creating the context, as Anthony said, the appropriate context for them to stumble at times. But ultimately, there's going to be a time when you're not there. So it's why it's important to have that. I know we're right up on time. Is there any other questions that we can speak to? Thoughts? Let me actually move along here so you all have our contact information here. Please engage with us on LinkedIn. We are both very active there, but also in terms of getting connected to the work that we do. If you see a space or place for it in the work or the different